Hi there, I'm Daniel Markham, and I'm the guy who wrote the domain model for domain modeling. And Easyam is an executable version of that. And what we're doing today is we're working a little more on Easyam. I did about 3 or 4 hours of work. So I want to do a little 10 or 20 minute video to show you how it's coming along. This is part of a series. You really should check out the whole series as an explainer, and there's all sorts of stuff that you should be clued in on if you want to see what's happening here. So I realized something in the last 3 hours that really kind of freaked me out a little bit. I actually had not finished my stories for the last couple little segments here. If you look at the Easyam, episode 3, I said what I would do would organize files by line type and print them out. I kind of did that. We showed that from the console. And then in episode 4 here, I would print the model in some kind of canonical sorted format. This is the one we're working on right now. And it occurred to me that what I did was I changed the definition of what line type meant. It's very common in backlogs. Remember, the backlog is a conversation between the technology team and the consumers, the users. It's not a to-do list. You're not working at McDonald's. It shouldn't be like a bulleted list. That's bullshit. It is a conversation, and as part of that conversation, what happens is you evolve a language unique to your solution. So really this all boils down to sort of a language game in which we're creating our own language. And so the way I used line type before meant one thing, and the way I use line type now means something else, which is perfectly fine. But it had implications on what I'm doing here. And so let's see what I am doing. If you remember, last time we left our hero, I had left it the big old sample text chunk, and I told you guys that this was the thing I used. I should switch on the cam here, shouldn't I? 1 second, please. Okay. So last time I left you guys, I left it the big old sample text hunk of stuff here. He says, pointing at the screen. And this was the thing I used to do regex checking for my command line matcher. And it's just sort of the gnarliest thing I could put together. And that was kind of cool. That did the job that I wanted to as far as doing the regex checking on the strings. But once I started going into these stories where I had to print out like a to-do list or whatever was it? Line type. Once I started doing this stuff, it was like, oh, hang on, wait a minute. I had already decided I didn't know line type. I just knew the command line match. If you remember, go back over. Let's go to ea.fs here. Okay. There's a pipeline, and basically, the first thing that happens is I take anything you send me from files into the console. I pull that in either off the command line or off the a list of files, just like you would use GCC or any other C compiler. And from there, I make a compilation unit array, which is basically, I think, a file info and a bunch of just strings coming in. And then from there, I did compilation line with commands, which is what we did last time. And then the missing step is actually taking that compilation line with commands and turning them into line types. I think I said that would be kind of trivial to do. Well, I was right. It was trivial. Conceptually, it was trivial. Getting the type system arraying aligned the right way was a little more difficult. And it's just a bunch of grunt work, really, more than anything else. There was nothing too difficult this time around. Like I said, it's only 3 or 4 hours of work. One of the big things I did as far as grunt work was there is now an ea.fs file. This is the root type file. There's an ea.fsi file. That's the root of the whole thing. So we had 4 or 5 projects that were compiling, and EA will contain all the types. One of the things I learned I didn't know, which was kind of cool, is that if you create a top-level file, without a module namespace, you can't have values in it. You can only have types, which it makes sense because you want values inside of something. So I moved all the compilation types. These would be the types that every consumer of the app uses. And there's our command type we talked about last time. Here's our line types that we talked about last time. And then the case match, wonderful stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then can't forget the little, the dork, the automatron, the weasel, the face, the asshole, the dreamer. This could be your job future, I don't know. These names I mentioned are actually the derivative names using the organization system I have for domain modeling and sort of extrapolating that into an org model. I hope they don't start looking for assholes. They do. I'm thinking I'd like to be the trainer for that stuff. So the EA was the big first thing we did, pull that stuff off. So let's take a look at the code. And now to the code. So the big thing I had to do was take that command line with the command match. Remember, there is a discriminated union. It's either a command match or a line type. I should show you that. Ooh, I can show you that. Let's go to the FSI version of this. Yeah, so we got a line type and we got a command type, and then as we pull the line in, all of this is the same, which was I pointed out last time. The file name, the unit number, all that junk, except for the type. And that type I actually do a switch between these two up here, either the command match or the line type. So I figure everything's going to be the same except for how far along it's in processing. That's a great case for using a discriminated union. So back over to our method here. So we've got this. Okay. Here we go with the match command line to type. So we got incoming and incoming stream. I've already talked about incoming stream just being that would be the compilation line, array of compilation lines with their line type set to command match, because that's all we know so far. And I had to say, okay, well, now that I'm going through the list of stuff, how do I figure out exactly what the line's telling me? And so if you look back over here on, let's pick one of these at random. Right, so here I've got user stories, and then I've got a new user story, print the model in some kind of format, and I've got another one, I print a question list of me questions. These are the ones I should be working on, but I decided not to, since I didn't actually understand the user story. We have a section heading, and after that section heading, I start looking for markdown new items. And so the basic rule of the whole compiler is everything's markdown, except for the new item, the bullet list on markdown I use for new items depending on what sort of section I'm in. That's sort of the easy, schmeezy way of doing stuff. So in this case, I'm in, this would be a to-do section, which is actually type of join, and there's a new item there. Then I have new user stories, and I have two new items. These things underneath the two items should be parent-child stuff. I didn't put that in there, so they would only compile as just notes. So back over here, what we need to do is figure out what kind of section we're in, right? And then if we're in a section, that's the kind of thing we need to add next. And then once we get a new item, that's the thing we're adding. Other than that, there's some other matching. I don't want to get you too far in how actually the code works. I want to show you how the F# works here. So to figure that out, I had to keep track of what's the next thing to add if I had a new item, right? And so I made a little helper type here. Where you at, buddy? Yeah. Next, add expected. Right? So it's item or join to item, right? And then I also kept track of the indent column, because I think that may play a role later on. It sort of pains me to say that, but I think it will. So when I come into this method, here I am. First I'll log my way in. Then I check to see if the string length is less than 2, because if you're only sending me 0 or 1 strings, then you just get what you sent me back. There's nothing for me to do for you. And then I create a return variable. I don't want to do this in some sort of pointless, slow fashion. I want to make little points I can go back and check on. Take my incoming stream and send it to an array map fold, which is pretty cool. I think this is a new one, like F#4 or so. It's a map, it's a fold. It's amazing. It does everything. I immediately wanted a map iFold, but that's stupid. So, and then the fold there at the bottom, the default add type is item, and the default indent column is 0. So that's my accumulator, and I just keep updating the accumulator, and just mapping what I got coming in to what I got coming out. Remember, I decided it was all going to be line types anyway, so heck, really not a lot to change except for changing the line type and the accumulator, really. You want to look at how some of that works. Let's try an easy one first. Right, so a section directive, which would be like user stories like we saw before. Basically, it just takes the accumulator. I'm going to be adding items after this. Whatever my indent column is what it is. And I have figured that out earlier in the flow. And then I return an array of compilation lines set to section directive. If we look at a more difficult one, how about the new item? Okay, so we showed. I talked about the using the markdown bullet items for new items. So I've already really figured out whether it's a new item, but over in the command match. That's over in Gene, the line matching machine. We'll look at that last episode we had. So if I know that I've got this new item here, then I need to figure out, well, what kind do I have? And I know that because I have in the accumulator, I have the add type. It's either item or a join to item. And if it's an item, I just put in that it's a new section item. To join to item, I check the indent. And that's why I kept track of the indent earlier, because kind of what I ran into would be I would type in an item like a new user story and then some notes, and then I want to back out and put another new user story in. And so that one case I wanted to keep track of what the indents are. I don't want to get into this indent level stuff, because then I really kind of do run down the AST tree and the compiler. I'm just trying to keep this simple as possible, but I do need to keep track of the indent for that. And so that covers that right here. We got let me join. Join. There's three types of join. I'll let you read the code for that. One of the funkiest one was the tags. So the reason this sort of isn't an academic exercise is I can take things like this user story, which is just so print the model line, whatever, blah blah blah. I can go over here and I can actually drop in. I can drop in tags. You see right here, I've got episode 2, status done, test script. So these tag the items below that. Then I go through and pull the tags off in the reporting system to do user story cards, interface with Trello. I can do a bazillion things because this is the switchboard project information. The tagging system actually takes that switchboard and connects all those pieces up. So I have to be able to spot tags, and the tags either have an ampersand, or they have like a pound here, or they have an @ sign. And this is not a hashtag. This is a pound sign, and I can go with bang for the exclamation point, but that's as far as I go. We must draw the line here, my friends. Okay, so back to compiler. Okay, so I know I've got a tag spotted over in the other code, and it's funky because it's the only one that can have multiples at the same time. So I know I have at least one tag, but how many do I have? So figure that out. I basically split the line on space here, and then I filter off everything that's nothing but the zero things, but there shouldn't be anything, but who knows. Then I take those and I make sure that they begin with one of my 3 key tag symbols, which this is double checking the command line regex, but it should be fine. That gives me my chunks, and then I take my chunks and I do a map. And for the chunks, I check the first character and just map it to whatever type of tag it is. And this is if you're interested in the tagging system, it's in the wiki. There's a wiki page on how the compiler works and everything, and I'll probably put a link on the blog for this. You should be reading the blog entries for this, because the blog gets in more technical detail of how things happen. Okay, so that's a big method for this little, like I said, maybe 5 or 6 hours work, but it wasn't like it was last time. It wasn't it was just a bunch of crap, really, more than anything else. So I've got everything coming in as a line, as a command match line type, going out as a line type. So I know what I got now. Right? It's a new item, it's a section, it's a tag. Now I need to test it because that's just a big hunk of code that I haven't written any tests for, and I didn't actually have any user stories for. One of the cool things that's happening, I don't know if you've noticed, is since I flushed out the discriminated union for both the command line and line type that we just talked about, and all the different types of commands, once that union's in place, when I go to add new functionality, I'm really kind of forced to consider all the pass-through. Now, my user stories may check one at a time, and that's fine, but the compiler itself will say, dude, you forgot case 7, case whatever, and that's what I want. This is the beauty of the matching system here. And so then I had to actually end up, it was easier for me just to include all the types here and match against everything than it would have been for me to go through the flow, the single flow, all of the skinny thread we usually try to do. It's not that the skinny thread's wrong, that the first thing I do is change my, for how we did this, the first thing I do is write a vector, simplest vector I can to get closer to the solution, because simple vector transforms, no code, no pass, no test, right? Next thing I do is actually change my type system, because the type system does the tests for me. And the last thing I do, if forced to, is I start writing code, test first, code, then the test pass. And this is exactly how I did this. I know I'm showing you the code first, but the way I actually did this was set this method up. I went and made a new file called line match 2. And this would be system testing. This is not user story testing, this is system testing, right? Maybe you call it unit testing. Heck if I know what a unit is, but I don't know what architecture is, and I've done that for years. So, so here I made 3 files, and these files are actually correct according to the spec as opposed to some of the notes I took earlier. And you can look at these, all kinds of neat stuff, but different stuff, and I get more and more complicated with the tags. Real world data, I have 3 different files here. File variable that just takes all the strings in, and that uses the literal format, so whatever I want to put in was fine. And then I do the tests. And then I wrote the tests, and I wrote the tests, I went back and wrote the code to make the test pass, just like I showed. So even though I showed you the code first, I was just kind of cheating to make myself look smarter than I actually am, which, you know, quite a bit of work. So the way I did tests, since I have 3 files, I did 3 hunks of tests. The first one is right here. And the first one I like kind of using sort of a long format because, like I said last time, what I'm really trying to do here is work at the meta level. The code has to work, don't get me wrong, and the stories have to pass, right? More important to me is my work pattern of getting the stories executing. Even more important is how I'm going to test this thing in the future. I want to code this and walk away from it. I don't really want to be screwing around with this another year from now. And to do that, I need to have some sort of testing sort of interaction with the system that doesn't involve programming. And so I started off doing this the hard way on purpose. That's sort of a lot of text here. And then my next file, I actually wrote a helper function. Then I just sort of passed the array element and a helper function to see what type of file I wanted. You may see where this is going. And then I did that again just to make sure that was okay. And so what I realized here in this third one was actually I might send 1 line in and get 3 lines out. And the reason for that is because the tagging we just talked about, where there can be multiple tags in 1 line, the easiest way of doing that is just sort of expanding lines out for each one, a different line for each tag. So I learned that. And then where I want to go from this is, I'm not sure how it's going to work. I know where I'm headed. I'm not sure how it's going to work exactly. I want a test file. The test file has input file, what type to expect, what the parameters are, and then I just test I'll use a data-driven testing system instead of having a hard code crap. And so this really the purpose of hard coding this in is to make sure I have the compiler in such a state that it can function, and to create a system whereby I can do more exhaustive testing and change the way the compiler works without ever having to code again. Because the more I code, the more I make bugs, the more overhead I have. I'm always trying to do the minimum amount of programming for the maximum amount of value.
Right.
So,
that's where we are. What is next?
Funny you should ask.
Well, now that I have the lines matched up, so I know what they are. What I need to do is build a model. Right? So we talked about the order stuff.
here we Talk about the order stuff to happen in. So we're down to number 4 here, right? So what I need is the model, because I need the model to finish up the story I was starting off, which is, I think, do master question lists or whatever. To answer those questions, I have to actually go through the model and pick up the types that are questions. I have a sketched out 4 or 5 line type for my model item, because I've used it before, and this is, like I said, a solved problem. This is my 3rd version of the code, and it is gone now, and I do not know why. I suspect aliens or demons, or I just forgot right away. One of those 3. Yeah, but so there's a type ahead I want to show you. I'll show you next time. Basically, I just, now that I know what I'm adding, I just add model items, and I do a join the parent, and then I put in the type, and that's about it, really. And then I can go through and sort them out. That will give me a canonical model item sort of order, which will allow me to print out a canonical model, which I think I talked about last time. Yeah, I think that's about it. I appreciate you guys stopping by. I've had a hoop so far, and next up, I think it's going to be much of moving more stuff around. I did I did all these tests using compiler result, and my reasoning at first was, well, I'll have compile will send a compiler result back, and then I'll just change the compiler result as I know more about what I'm doing, which sounds quite reasonable until you hook a bunch of dang tests into the compiler result. Yeah, and then you become very sad because then you have all your tests typed into the wrong thing. So I got to go back to the tests, and I got to change the result. Lots of fun for everybody. Well, I think that's about it. Finally, I think I will get to the point where I'm going to get to the reporting system. I did make some changes to the reporting system. As I moved files around, I went ahead and made sure that the reporting system could handle the same sorts of input that the compiler could. One of the questions I had was, should the reporting exe actually recompile, or should it just take whatever we have? Still conflicted about that, but the model setup will be set up so that it eats its own. In other words, whatever it creates, it can consume. So either I should be able to take a bunch of source files, compile it, send it pipe it over the command line to the reporting engine, and have it work, or actually pull files in and have it work. It may not be a problem I need to solve. It may be just up to how the users want to do it, which is even better. Thanks for dropping by. I'm Daniel Markham. I will see you on the internet.